Why is buying a house in the US starting to feel like trying to win the lottery without buying a ticket? Not too long ago, you could buy a home for less than twice the median household income. That would be around $160,000. Today in the US, the median home price is pushing $400,000 and climbing faster than inflation or salary growth. So what happened? Why is finding a place to live suddenly like solving a math problem where the answers keep changing? Well, there are a lot of factors at play. Some you'll expect, and some you definitely won't, but one of the biggest reasons might just be your neighbor's fault. Trying to understand the change of the cost of an item across decades is not a trivial matter. Sure, we have inflation to account for, but the items themselves also change, especially when it comes to items that are impacted by technology. Comparing the price of a 1990s computer to a 2020s computer would be silly, because the 2020s computer is so much more capable and probably mobile. The cost of cars have gone up from the 50s, but a car today isn't the same as a car back then. There are so many more features, more fuel efficient, and it's much safer. The median price for a new home in 1950 was $7,354. Adjusting for inflation to 2020 dollars, that's about $78,974. The median house price in 2020 was about $329,000. That's a huge difference. A house in 2020 is more than 4 times the cost now, adjusting for inflation. The cost of a house has clearly grown much larger than inflation, but let's look deeper. Wages have also increased faster than inflation. The median family made $3,300 a year in 1950, so the house was about 2.2 times their yearly earnings. In 2020, the median income was $67,521, and the 2020 median house price was $329,000. That's 4.87 times the yearly salary. These calculations mean that the house price hasn't jumped to 417% of the 1950 price relative to the median salary, but only 219%. Or in other words, it takes a little more than twice the number of median salaries to buy a house in 2020 than it did in 1950. Still a jump, but not nearly as large as we might have expected. Let's be sure that we're comparing apples to apples. We don't want to fall into the 1990s to 2020s computer comparison trap. The median house built in 1950 was a single-story house of only 983 square feet, or 91.3 square meters. No garage or carport, no AC, probably a fireplace instead of central heating, or possibly 3 very small bedrooms. Here's an example of what that might look like. The typical house in 2020 is a multi-level house with 2,300 square feet, has 3 or 4 bedrooms, at least 2 full bathrooms, a 2-car garage, central heating and air, 2 bedrooms and 1 bath, and they might look something like these houses. Clearly, these are not the same houses. No wonder the houses are more expensive now. It isn't just monetary inflation, it is house size inflation and feature inflation. On average, the median house in 2020 is 2.34 times the size of the 1950s house, but actually only costs 2.18 times as much in median salaries. By this measure, we're actually getting a better value on homes now than in 1950. That's just comparing the areas and doesn't include the features like the 2-car garage, air conditioning, better insulation, higher efficiency appliances, etc. It also doesn't account for the cost of current regulations. In 2021, the National Home Builders of America estimated the total cost of regulations for a new house was over $93,000. That was up 44% just from 2011. Regulation costs in the 50s would have been minimal, nothing close to a fourth of the cost of the house, and that's including the land. We can take the calculations we've done so far and create a new metric for measuring the price of the house that accounts for the size and the median national salary. To account for size, we will look at cost per 1,000 square feet. And to account for median salary, we will use a percentage of salary to buy each 1,000 square foot of house. Here is the salary percent per area metric for years going back to the 1940s. Notice that the 40s and 50s were pretty high. Then we dropped, and are now just getting back up to the cost of houses in the 40s and 50s. This doesn't even account for the fact that families are smaller now. Back in 1950, the average household had about 3.4 people. Today, it's just over 2.5. That means each 1,000 square foot goes further now. We have more space per person. Well, you may be thinking, who cares if the houses are a good value if they're still too darn expensive to buy? Or you may be thinking, how can I use this information to get a cheaper house? We learned that houses are relatively more expensive today mainly because they're so much bigger and have more features. So the first obvious choice would be to build a house that's much smaller with fewer features, and it'll be much cheaper. Along with that strategy, there are many other strategies you could do to decrease the cost of a home. The problem is that almost everything that people have done in the not-so-recent past to create cheap housing in the US, and what people are allowed to do in many other countries, is illegal in almost all US cities. I did a thought experiment to run through strategies that I would try to create cheap living for my family. I could buy a plot of land, buy a large-ish tiny home, and park the tiny home on the property and live in it. Nope, that is illegal. My city won't allow you to live in a house without a permanent foundation. Okay, I buy a small manufactured home, say 800 square feet, which you can get pretty cheap, put it in a permanent foundation and live in it. Nope, my city won't allow houses that small. Okay, I build a modern style home that's larger than 900 square feet. I really like this style since it requires less lumber. Nope, my city demands that the footprint of the house be 900 square feet. This means I can't build two small houses and rent one out to help pay for my home because the houses have to be so large. Okay, I sell half of my lot to a friend and we both build legal small houses. Nope, you can't just subdivide your property without approval through the city and your neighbors. And with minimum lot size regulations, it is probably a no-go. Okay, I build a larger legal house and rent out some of it to a friend's family who is struggling. Nope, that's illegal. It's a single-family home and only one family is allowed. You can't have two unrelated families living in the same house. Although this still happens, but because it's illegal, it's a risk to both the renters and the owners. Maybe if you happen to be in an area that allows duplexes, you could try to build a duplex and live in one side, and the rent from the other side can supplement your income. But if you're already struggling to build a small legal home, then the cost of building something twice as big is not an option. Over and over again, anything I try to do to cut down on the size of the house and the land to create a cheaper home for my family is not an option according to the laws. And what I would do is not an issue with safety. All of the building would be done to safety codes. If you can buy a home, there are ways to offset the cost. More cities now allow accessory dwelling units, meaning you can rent out part of your home or build a small separate unit, even if zoning normally wouldn't allow two small houses on the same lot. I personally like these policies because it adds to the housing availability and can help lower rent prices. But why is a big house and a small apartment on the same lot okay, but two small houses on the same lot are not? Some might see this as another way for the rich who can afford a large home to exploit the households that can't. Well, after doing this math and thinking through these thought experiments, I have some thoughts. I'll toss them out for discussion and you can respond in the comments. As family sizes shrink and land costs rise, many would prefer a smaller, more affordable home over renting or overpriced trailer parks. But cities and neighbors often block these options. Why? The short answer, the city doesn't like it and your would-be neighbors don't want it. The city wants to keep up an ideal image with their homes, and smaller, cheaper homes might lower nearby property values. That's the essence of NIMBY, not in my backyard, where people might be happy for something in the abstract, but they don't want it near them. But here's the problem. Current homeowners can impose costs on future homeowners, but not the other way around. Existing neighbors impose a cost of $200,000 or $300,000 on a future homebuilder by making them build a much larger home on a larger lot compared to building a small home or two small homes on the same lot. But future homebuilders can't impose a small cost on existing homeowners by building the small home and slightly lowering neighbors' home values. Moreover, the cost imposed to the future homebuilder is a real cost, while the home values are only realized upon selling, and no out-of-pocket expenses are actually accrued until selling. Meanwhile, lower home values would save the current homeowner's property tax year after year. This imbalance of power hurts the struggling families the most. It also makes building more expensive, limiting existing rentals and forcing more households to rent, which results in higher rent prices and landlords that don't have to be responsive to the needs of their tenants, often making renting a bad experience because there are so many families that are anxious for housing. In the words of the economist Thomas Sowell, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. It feels to me like we don't have the right balance of trade-offs in the U.S. housing situation. The freedom to build what you want on your own land varies by state and city, and some areas have much more freedom, and as a result, housing tends to be cheaper. Some economists have suggested that residential zoning laws should be minimal, allowing much more freedom for homeowners and builders to build cheap houses, and allow people that want to self-impose housing regulations as part of a group do so through homeowner associations, or HOAs. So what have we learned? Housing prices have gone up, yes, but when adjusted for inflation, size, and features, We're back to the costs of the 50s and 60s. We just live in bigger, fancier houses now. But sadly, we've imposed a kind of reverse luxury tax on future homeowners, forcing them to buy houses that must fit so many regulations that homeownership is out of reach for millions of households. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share our videos. Be sure to follow Math the World on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you so much for your support.